We live in a time where connection is everywhere and intimacy is rare. We can reach anyone instantly, yet feel unseen in our closest relationships. We say we value love, but we organize our lives around urgency, productivity, and approval rather than presence. And so the question is not why relationships are failing. The question is, what are we prioritizing instead of them? Because love does not disappear when neglected, it waits. And when it waits too long, it turns into resentment, distance, or quiet despair. Modern relationships are not broken because we are incapable of love. They struggle because many of us learned, long before adulthood, that love must be earned, delayed, or sacrificed for survival. At the core of every relationship lies a simple human need to be emotionally met, not fixed, not advised, not managed, but felt, heard, and accepted. Yet many of us enter relationships carrying unhealed wounds from childhood, wounds formed in environments where our emotional needs were inconvenient, misunderstood, or unsafe. We adapted. We became pleasing, productive, quiet, strong, or independent, not because it was healthy, but because it was necessary. And those adaptations follow us into love. We prioritize work over presence because approval once equaled safety. We avoid conflict because connection once felt fragile. We abandon our own needs because belonging once required self-erasure. So when a relationship asks for consistency, vulnerability, or emotional availability, it doesn't just ask for love, it asks us to confront old pain. And many people don't withdraw because they don't care. They withdraw because their nervous systems interpret closeness as danger. Healing in relationships begins not with blame, but with understanding. When we fail to prioritize love, it's rarely a moral failure. It's often a learned survival strategy. But here is the truth. A relationship cannot thrive on leftovers. Love cannot survive on promises postponed to someday. And emotional intimacy cannot grow where presence is optional. Prioritization is not about grand gestures. It's about where attention lies. It's about choosing responsiveness over distraction, curiosity over defensiveness, and truth over image. Love is not something we fall into. It is something we practice, especially when it feels uncomfortable. And emotional healing does not happen in isolation. It happens in safe connection when someone stays, listens, and does not demand that we be different to be worthy. When relationships are prioritized, they become spaces where old wounds are not reenacted, but repaired. Where partners stop asking, "How do I protect myself?" and begin asking, "How do I stay present without abandoning myself?" That is not easy work, but it is deeply human work. And it is the work that turns relationships from sources of pain into pathways for healing. Neglecting relationships is often a trauma response, not a lack of love. When relationships are neglected, we are quick to call it indifference, selfishness, or emotional immaturity. We assume that if someone truly cared, they would show up, stay present, make the effort. But this interpretation misses something essential about human behavior. Very often, what looks like a lack of love is actually a deeply ingrained response to earlier emotional pain. Human beings are wired for connection. We do not have to be taught how to seek closeness. It is our biological and emotional nature. So when someone repeatedly pulls away from intimacy, deprioritizes relationships, or becomes emotionally unavailable, it is worth asking not what is wrong with them, but what happened to them. Many people grew up in environments where emotional needs were not welcomed. Love may have been conditional, inconsistent, or mixed with fear, shame, or unpredictability. As children, we do not have the power to change our circumstances, but we do have the capacity to adapt. If expressing needs led to rejection, we learn to silence them. If closeness brought disappointment or emotional overwhelm, we learn distance. If love felt unstable, we learned self-reliance. These adaptations were intelligent responses to ensure survival and belonging. The tragedy is that the nervous system does not automatically update itself when the danger has passed. What once kept us safe can later keep us lonely. In adulthood, when a relationship asks for emotional presence, vulnerability, or prioritization, the body may react as if it is being threatened. The mind might say, "I love this person," but the nervous system whispers, "This is not safe." Withdrawal, distraction, overwork, or emotional numbing then emerge not as choices, but as reflexes. This is why people can genuinely care for someone and still fail to show up. It is why love can coexist with avoidance. The heart may be open, but the body remembers a time when openness came at too high a cost. Neglect, in this sense, is not an absence of feeling. It is the presence of fear shaped by earlier experiences. When we label these patterns as character flaws, we deepen shame and reinforce disconnection. Shame does not heal trauma, it entrenches it. Healing begins when we replace judgment with compassion and curiosity. When we recognize that neglect is often a protective response, we create the conditions for change. Safety, not pressure, allows the nervous system to soften. Understanding, not accusation, makes presence possible. This does not mean that neglect should be ignored or excused. Pain caused in relationships is real and deserves acknowledgement. But accountability rooted in compassion is far more transformative than blame. When people feel emotionally safe enough to explore their patterns without being condemned, they gain the freedom to respond rather than react. As relationships become spaces of emotional safety, something profound can happen. The same connection that once triggered fear can become the context for healing. Slowly, the body learns that closeness no longer means danger, that love does not require self-erasure, and that presence does not lead to abandonment. In this way, prioritizing relationships is not just an act of love toward another person, it is an act of healing toward oneself. Neglect is not proof that love is missing. More often, it is evidence that love learned to hide in order to survive. And when that is understood, both partners can begin to move from defensiveness to awareness, from disconnection to choice, and from survival to genuine intimacy. Prioritization is about attention, not time. When people say, "I don't have time," what they usually mean is, "This is not where my attention goes." Time is a convenient explanation because it feels neutral, almost innocent. It doesn't sound like rejection. It doesn't sound like a choice. It sounds like life happened. But relationships don't primarily break from a shortage of hours. They break from a shortage of presence. You can be in the same room with someone for years and still not truly be with them. And you can have very little time. 10 minutes, one conversation, a look across the table, and in that moment offer more intimacy than someone else offers in an entire week. Because what nourishes connection is not duration, it is contact. It is the felt sense that the other person exists in you while you are with them. Attention is not simply focus. Attention is emotional availability. It is responsiveness. It is the willingness to let another person's inner world matter to you enough that you actually meet it. And that doesn't require a free calendar. It requires a free nervous system. This is the part we often overlook. When someone cannot give attention, it's not always because they are busy. It may be because they are overwhelmed, because their mind is full of unshed grief, unprocessed stress, unresolved fear, because their body has learned that stillness is unsafe. For many people, distraction is not a habit, it is a refuge. If they stop, they feel. If they feel, they remember. And if they remember, they might touch pain that has been held back for decades. So they keep moving, they keep scrolling, they keep producing, they keep managing, and then they call it lack of time. But in relationships, what we call time is often just the socially acceptable label for avoidance. The deepest meaning of prioritization is not arranging schedules. It is arranging the inner stance from which we relate. It is the decision, moment to moment, that the person in front of me is not an interruption to my life. They are part of my life. And if they are not part of my life, then we should stop calling it a relationship and start calling it what it is, coexistence. When attention is absent, the other person doesn't simply feel in love. They feel unreal. They feel like they are living beside someone rather than with someone. They begin to doubt their own worth, their own impact, their own place, not because you didn't buy gifts or plan dates, but because your eyes were elsewhere, your mind was elsewhere, your nervous system was elsewhere, and human beings are exquisitely sensitive to that. We can tolerate many things, but we struggle to tolerate being emotionally invisible. Modern life makes this problem worse, not because it is inherently evil, but because it is designed to fracture attention. Our attention is monetized, pulled apart, constantly stimulated. We become trained to live with half a mind here and half a mind elsewhere. And then we bring that fractured attention into love and wonder why intimacy feels thin. Intimacy requires concentration. Not the tense kind, but the gentle kind. The ability to stay with a person's experience without running away inside yourself. The ability to listen without preparing your defense. The ability to be touched by what they say, that is attention. And it is not measured by hours. It is measured by presence. You can tell when someone is giving attention because you feel it in your body. You feel received. You feel like your words land somewhere. You feel like there is a space inside them where you can exist. And you can tell when they are not giving attention because you feel yourself shrinking, performing, over-explaining, trying harder. You start chasing connection. That chasing becomes exhausting. And then resentment grows, not because the person didn't make time, but because they didn't make contact. And here is something important. Attention is not only something we offer to others, it is also what we offer to ourselves. Many people can't prioritize relationships because they can't tolerate being with themselves. Their inner world is either too painful or too empty, so they constantly reach outward. They may appear functional and productive, but internally they are fleeing. And it is hard to be emotionally present with another human being when you are not emotionally present with your own experience. Prioritizing love, therefore, begins with a kind of honesty. What do I do with my attention when I am not working, when I am not busy, when I am not distracted? Where does my mind go? What do I avoid? Because whatever we avoid internally, we will avoid relationally. If I avoid discomfort, I will avoid difficult conversations. If I avoid vulnerability, I will avoid emotional depth. If I avoid grief, I will avoid tenderness. Attention reveals our attachments and our fears, and often people confuse attention with intensity. They think love means passion, constant talk, constant closeness. But attention is quieter than that. Attention is the phone put down without resentment. It's the pause before responding. It's remembering what matters to the other person without needing a reminder. It's the ability to notice the shift in their face and ask, what's happening for you? It's the willingness to be influenced by them because they matter enough to affect you. This is why prioritization can happen even in a busy life. Because it is not about having endless time. It is about having moments of undivided presence. It is about treating small opportunities for connection as sacred rather than disposable. A relationship does not need constant availability. It needs consistent aliveness. And if someone says, I'm too busy, the real question becomes busy with what? Not in a blaming way, but in a revealing way. Because whatever consistently receives your attention becomes your true priority, regardless of what you claim to value. If your attention goes to work, to screens, to other people's approval, to constant stimulation, then those are the things regulating your nervous system. Those are the things giving you a sense of identity or safety. And the relationship then is competing with your coping mechanisms. That's why asking someone to make time often fails. It sounds like a logistical request, but what is actually being asked is much deeper. Can you be here with me? Can you tolerate the intimacy of my presence? Can you let me matter enough to interrupt your patterns? Can you stay when you feel discomfort? That is not a time problem. That is a nervous system problem. That is a healing problem. When attention becomes the measure, prioritization becomes more honest. It's no longer about tallying hours. It becomes about whether we are emotionally accessible when we are together, whether we truly meet each other, whether we allow the relationship to shape us rather than simply fit into the leftover corners of our lives. And this is where healing begins. Because when attention is given consistently, something in the other person settles. Their nervous system learns that they don't have to chase. They don't have to prove. They don't have to perform for scraps of connection. They can relax into being. And when two people can be present in that way, briefly or for long periods, it does something profound. It makes love feel safe. Not perfect, not always easy, but safe enough to grow. That is prioritization, not time, attention, presence. The quiet decision again and again that the person before me is not competing with my life. They are part of the life I'm choosing. Unhealed childhood adaptations shape adult relationships long before we choose our partners, our careers, or the way we show up in love. We learn something far more fundamental: how to stay connected while staying safe. Childhood is not a neutral starting point. It is a training ground for the nervous system. And the strategies we develop there do not disappear when we grow up. They mature with us, quietly shaping our adult relationships from behind the scenes. A child depends on connection for survival. If love, attention, or safety are inconsistent, the child will not question the environment. They will question themselves. They will adapt. If being expressive leads to rejection, they will learn to be quiet. If being needy feels like a burden, they will learn to need less. If emotions overwhelm the adults around them, they will learn to manage, soothe, or disappear. These adaptations are not choices made consciously. They are intelligent, instinctive responses to the question every child asks, often without words. What do I need to be in order to belong? The problem is not that these adaptations exist. The problem is that they persist long after the conditions that required them have changed. In adult relationships, these early patterns often masquerade as personality traits. Someone says, "That's just how I am. I'm independent," without realizing that independence once meant emotional isolation. Another says, "I hate conflict," without seeing that conflict once threatened attachment. Someone else becomes the caretaker, the fixer, the endlessly understanding one, not because it brings them joy, but because love once depended on being useful. And so people enter relationships not as they are, but as who they learn to be. The anxious partner may not be too much. They may be reliving a childhood where attention was unpredictable. The distant partner may not be cold. They may have learned that closeness comes with emotional cost. The people pleaser may not lack boundaries. They may have learned that asserting needs risks abandonment. What looks like incompatibility is often two unhealed adaptations colliding. This is why relationships can feel so confusing. On the surface, two adults are speaking. Underneath, two nervous systems are negotiating old fears. One seeks reassurance because uncertainty once meant loss. The other withdraws because intensity once meant overwhelm. Each triggers the other, not because either is wrong, but because both are protecting something fragile that was never fully protected. Unhealed adaptations also distort how we interpret the present. A delayed text can feel like rejection. A raised voice can feel like danger. A request for closeness can feel like control. These reactions are not about the current partner. They are echoes of earlier experiences that were never fully processed. The body remembers even when the mind insists. This is different. And here is a crucial point: these patterns do not mean we are broken. They mean we survived. But survival strategies are not the same as intimacy skills. What once kept us safe can later keep us stuck. Healing begins when we stop asking, "How do I change my partner?" and start asking, "What part of me learned to relate this way?" Not with blame, but with compassion. Because when we recognize our adaptations, we gain choice. We can pause instead of react. We can feel the old fear without letting it run the relationship. We can learn to tolerate closeness, conflict, and vulnerability without assuming catastrophe. Relationships then become more than places where wounds are triggered. They can become places where wounds are revealed gently enough to heal. This requires patience, honesty, and often discomfort. It means allowing ourselves to feel emotions we once had to suppress. It means learning that love does not require self-abandonment, performance, or distance. When childhood adaptations remain unconscious, they control us. When they become conscious, they can soften. We begin to realize that the relationship we are in now is not the one we were in then. That the partner in front of us is not the caregiver from our past. That we are no longer powerless children trying to earn safety. Unhealed childhood adaptations shape adult relationships, not because we are weak, but because connection is so important to us that we learn to bend ourselves to preserve it. The work of adulthood is not to judge those adaptations, but to thank them and then gently let them evolve. Because love, when it is safe enough, does not ask us to become someone else. It asks us to finally come home to who we are. Healing happens in safe connection, not isolation. There is a powerful myth woven into modern culture that healing is something we must do alone, that strength means self-sufficiency, that if we retreat far enough inward, analyze ourselves deeply enough, or become independent enough, we will finally be whole. But this belief misunderstands both human nature and the nature of healing itself. Human beings are wounded in relationship, and therefore we heal in relationship. From the moment we are born, our nervous systems are shaped through connection. We learn who we are not in isolation, but through the responses of those around us. When connection is nurturing and reliable, the body learns safety. When it is inconsistent, intrusive, or absent, the body learns vigilance. Trauma is not just what happened to us. It is what happened to us in the absence of sufficient emotional support. And because it occurred in relationship, It cannot be fully resolved outside of relationship. Isolation can sometimes create temporary relief. It can feel quieter, more controlled, less threatening. For many people, being alone feels safer than being close. There is no risk of disappointment, rejection, or misunderstanding. But safety created through avoidance is not the same as safety created through trust. One protects us from pain, the other transforms it. Healing requires a nervous system that can gradually learn something new, and the nervous system learns through experience, not insight alone. You can understand your patterns perfectly and still be unable to change them. You can know why you withdraw, why you people please, why you shut down or become reactive, and still repeat those behaviors. This is because trauma lives not in the story, but in the body. And the body does not update itself through logic. It updates itself through safe, repeated relational experiences. A safe connection is not one without conflict. It is one where conflict does not threaten belonging. It is not one where emotions are always regulated. It is one where emotions are allowed without punishment or withdrawal. Safety is not perfection, it is repair. It is the experience of being upset and then met, of being misunderstood and then clarified, of being vulnerable and not abandoned. In safe connection, something subtle but profound begins to happen. The body starts to relax its defenses. Hypervigilance softens. The constant scanning for danger quiets. The nervous system realizes, slowly and cautiously, that it no longer has to stay armored. This is not a conscious decision. It is a biological shift, and it cannot be rushed. This is why healing does not happen through isolation, even when isolation feels peaceful. Peace without connection can easily become numbness. Growth requires contact. It requires the friction of relationship, not to harm us, but to reveal us. In relationship, old wounds surface not because something is wrong, but because something is finally safe enough to be seen. Many people fear that bringing their wounds into relationships will damage them. In truth, unexamined wounds already shape relationships unconsciously. When healing is avoided, patterns repeat. When healing is welcome, patterns can be interrupted. Safe connection allows us to say, often for the first time, "This hurts," without being dismissed, corrected, or shamed, and that experience alone can undo years of silent suffering. It is also important to understand that safe connection does not necessarily mean romantic partnership. It can occur in therapy, in friendship, in community, in any relationship where there is consistency, attunement, and respect. What matters is not the role, but the quality of presence. Someone must be willing to stay emotionally engaged without trying to control, fix, or flee. Healing in connection does not mean becoming dependent. In fact, true connection fosters autonomy. When the nervous system feels safe, we do not cling, we explore. We do not merge, we differentiate. Secure connection creates the freedom to be ourselves without fear of losing the relationship. Isolation may feel like independence, but it often reinforces fear. Connection, when safe, dissolves it. This is why the most profound healing moments are often simple and quiet. Someone listens without interrupting. Someone believes us. Someone stays present when we are not at our best. Someone allows our feelings without needing them to go away. In those moments, the body learns something it may never have learned before, that we can be fully ourselves and still be held in connection. Healing happens in safe connection because safety is not a concept, it is a felt experience. And that experience is relational. We do not heal by proving we can survive alone. We heal by discovering that we no longer have to. Love requires conscious practice, not passive hope. Many people enter relationships with a belief that love is something that happens to us. We fall into it, we feel it, we're swept by it. And in the beginning, that belief feels true because early love often comes with intensity, chemistry, excitement, fascination, longing. It can feel effortless, almost automatic, as if the relationship is being carried by a current stronger than our own will. But sooner or later, every relationship arrives at a different territory, a more honest one. The novelty fades, life presses in, stress accumulates, unresolved wounds surface, routines form. And then the question is no longer, do we feel love? The question becomes, can we practice it? Because love that relies only on feeling is fragile. Feelings fluctuate, they change with sleep, hormones, pressure at work, a careless comment, a moment of insecurity. If love depends on being inspired by each other every day, it will collapse the moment reality becomes ordinary. And reality is always ordinary at times. Because human beings are not meant to be permanent sources of stimulation. We are meant to be sources of connection. Passive hope says, if it's meant to be, it will work out dull. Conscious practice says, if it matters, I will show up. And showing up is not romantic, it's not cinematic, it's not always pleasant. It's often inconvenient and humbling. It requires self-awareness and responsibility. It requires us to notice our impulses, our urge to withdraw, to attack, to punish, to shut down, to become superior, to become cold, and to ask, is this my truth or is this my protection? Because what destroys relationships is rarely the absence of love. More often it is the dominance of protection. Two people may care deeply and still hurt each other because their nervous systems are prioritizing safety over connection. And when the nervous system feels threatened, it does not ask, how can I love? It asks, how can I survive? Then we become reactive, defensive, controlling, avoidant. We stop being partners and become strategies. Conscious practice is the willingness to interrupt that survival mode. It is the willingness to pause in the moment when we most want to win and instead choose understanding. Not because we are weak, but because we are mature enough to see the cost of being right. It is the willingness to ask, what's happening inside you? Instead of declaring, here's what you did wrong. It is the willingness to stay present with discomfort long enough for something deeper to be revealed. Love is not merely a feeling toward someone. Love is a way of being with someone. It is the daily decision to remain emotionally available, to be curious, to be kind when kindness is not automatic, to keep the heart open when the ego wants to close it. And that is not sentimental, it is disciplined. It is a practice, like learning an instrument or developing a craft. You do it because it matters, not because it's always easy. People often think love should be effortless, and when it isn't, they assume something is wrong. But effortlessness belongs to infatuation, not intimacy. Intimacy asks more of us. It asks us to face ourselves. It asks us to bring honesty where we would prefer comfort, to bring vulnerability where we would prefer control. Passive hope says, my partner should just know. Conscious practice says, I will communicate. Passive hope says, they should love me for who I am, when who I am is actually a collection of unexamined defenses. Conscious practice says, I will take responsibility for how my pain shows up. Passive hope says, time will fix it. Conscious practice says, we will repair it. Repair is one of the most overlooked forms of love. The ability to return after disconnection, to acknowledge harm without excuses, to listen without preparing a rebuttal, to say, I see how that affected you, even if you didn't mean it, to soothe rather than escalate, to come back to the same side of the table and face the problem together instead of turning each other into the problem. This is not about becoming perfect partners. Perfection is a fantasy and a performance. Practice is real. Practice includes failure. It includes moments of being triggered, moments of shutting down, moments of losing your way. The question is not whether we fail. The question is whether we return, whether we learn, whether we remain committed to the work of connection. And the work of connection is also the work of emotional healing, because when two people practice love consciously, they create a space where the past can loosen its grip. When you are met with patience instead of punishment, something in you that learned to brace for rejection begins to soften. When you are listened to instead of dismissed, something in you that learned to silence itself begins to speak. When you are held in conflict rather than abandoned, something in you that learned that love is unsafe begins to revise that belief. But this does not happen through hope alone. Hope is passive. Healing is active. Love is active. Love requires us to notice what we do when we feel threatened. Do we criticize? Do we withdraw? Do we become cold? Do we become needy? Do we collapse? Those are not personality quirks. They are strategies, and conscious love means we start relating to those strategies not as identities, but as protective patterns we can outgrow. This is why love is inseparable from awareness. Without awareness, we will act out our wounds and call it love. We will confuse attachment with intimacy, intensity with connection, longing with compatibility. We will keep trying to feel our way into a stable relationship rather than practice our way into one. A consciously practiced love is not just, I love you. It is, I will be present with you. I will be honest with you. I will learn how to hold your pain without making it about me. I will not let my fear be the one driving the relationship. I will choose repair. I will choose to see you. And perhaps most importantly, I will choose to see myself, because the deepest obstacle to love is not the other person, it is our own unconsciousness. It is the unexamined pain that reacts before we understand. It is the childhood voice that says, "You're not safe, even when you are." It is the old belief that to be loved you must perform, or that to be safe you must distance, or that to be seen you must demand. Conscious practice is how we gently disprove those beliefs, not in theory, not in a journal, not in an idealized future, in the living moment, with another human being, when it matters. Love is not a mood you wait for, it is a practice you return to, again and again, and the return is the miracle. A healthy relationship allows presence without self-abandonment. Many people believe that being in a relationship requires sacrifice, and in some sense, that is true. But there is a critical difference between sacrifice and self-abandonment, and confusing the two has caused immense suffering. A healthy relationship does not ask us to disappear in order to belong. It does not require us to silence our truth, suppress our needs, or contort ourselves to maintain connection. In fact, the more a relationship depends on self-abandonment, the less healthy it is, no matter how loving it may appear on the surface. Self-abandonment usually begins long before adulthood. As children, we learn very quickly what parts of us are welcomed and what parts are not. If expressing anger threatens connection, we learn to swallow it. If showing vulnerability overwhelms our caregivers, we learn to be strong. If asserting needs leads to rejection or guilt, we learn to minimize ourselves. These adjustments are not failures of character, they are acts of survival. The child's nervous system learns that staying connected requires leaving parts of themselves behind. Later, in adult relationships, these early adaptations often masquerade as love. People say, "I'm just easygoing," when in reality they are afraid of conflict. They say, "I don't need much," when they have learned that needing is dangerous. They say, "As long as you're happy, I'm fine," while quietly eroding inside. This is not presence, it is disappearance in the name of harmony. Presence, in a relational sense, is not simply being physically there or emotionally attentive. Presence means bringing your full self into the relationship, the parts that are calm and the parts that are uncomfortable, and the parts that agree and the parts that dissent. Presence requires honesty, and honesty requires safety. Without safety, people may stay, but they do not truly arrive. A healthy relationship creates enough emotional safety for both people to remain present without betraying themselves. This does not mean there is no compromise. It means compromise does not come at the cost of authenticity. It means that when one person says, "This doesn't work for me," the relationship does not threaten to collapse. It means disagreement does not equal disconnection. It means that love is not withdrawn when someone takes up space. This is especially important because many people equate presence with compliance. They believe that being present means being agreeable, understanding, patient at all times. But that kind of presence is hollow. It is performed, not lived. True presence includes the capacity to say no, to set boundaries, to express discomfort, and to tolerate the discomfort that follows. Without these capacities, presence becomes submission. Self-abandonment also shows up in subtler ways. It can look like constantly monitoring the other person's mood and adjusting yourself accordingly. It can look like prioritizing the relationship while quietly resenting it. It can look like losing touch with your own feelings because you are so focused on maintaining connection. Over time, this creates emotional numbness or burnout. People don't leave these relationships because they don't care, they leave because they have lost themselves. A healthy relationship does not require hypervigilance. It does not require you to manage another person's emotions at the expense of your own. It does not punish you for being honest. Instead, it invites mutual responsibility. Each person tends to their own inner world while staying open to the other's experience. This balance between connection and autonomy is what allows love to be sustainable. When presence does not require self-abandonment, something important shifts in the nervous system. The body no longer associates closeness with danger. It no longer believes that intimacy means loss of self. This allows people to relax into connection rather than brace against it. They become less defensive, less reactive, more curious. Not because they are trying harder, but because they are safer. This kind of relationship also changes how conflict is experienced. Conflict becomes information rather than a threat. It becomes a signal that something needs attention, not proof that love is failing. When both people trust that they can remain themselves and still remain connected, they can tolerate the tension that growth requires. They can stay present in difficult conversations without shutting down or exploding. They can listen without disappearing. Perhaps most importantly, a relationship that allows presence without self-abandonment creates space for healing. Many people carry an unspoken belief that love requires them to be less than they are. When they experience a relationship where their truth is welcomed rather than punished, that belief begins to loosen. They discover that they can be seen without being rejected, that they can set limits without losing love, that they can be whole and still belong. This does not mean the relationship will always feel comfortable. Growth rarely is. But discomfort in a healthy relationship does not feel like erasure. It feels like stretching. It feels like learning how to stay rooted in yourself while staying connected to another. That is a skill, not an instinct. And for many people, it is learned for the first time in adulthood. Presence without self-abandonment is not selfish. It is respectful to yourself and to the relationship. When you bring your full self, you offer something real, not a performance. And when both people do this, the relationship becomes a place where intimacy deepens rather than depletes, where connection strengthens rather than constricts. Love does not ask us to disappear, it asks us to arrive. Love does not ask us to be smaller so it can survive. It asks us to be real so it can breathe. When we choose presence without abandoning ourselves, we teach the body a new truth. Connection does not require erasure. In that space, something softens. The guarding eases. The heart no longer has to choose between safety and love. Healing is not becoming someone new. It is remembering that we were always worthy of being met, fully honestly, as we are.